Alright, hello everybody, Zaxtorian here. I was browsing the new comments on my videos not even a half hour ago, and I gotta say guys, there was a comment put on my video that really hit me, and I was actually in the middle of writing a long response when suddenly the page refreshed and the comment and everything I was writing disappeared. So I believe what happened is the commenter came back and removed his comment. For whatever reason, I have no idea. But as you can see here, guys, I have refreshed this page here for Poggers, and I have nothing but positive comments here about my recent Poggers release, which is very similar and takes inspiration from the game Frogger. However, guys, yeah, see if I refresh the page here, right here, we get an ad, but we see here I had 10 comments, and I believe the comments that got removed was the one he put in here and my response as I was writing it. So those aren't showing up, but I want to go back and talk about this comment and my response to it, which I think is going to be a lot easier to talk about rather than write anyway, because it was getting pretty lengthy. But the comment should be up here, guys. If I come up here, I see it right here. So if I click on this, Captain Kirk said 3 hours ago, Zaxter, I've been a fan for some time now, but I'm starting to get disinterested with your work. You seem to constantly target people selling reworked stuff, yet all you do is publish rehashed games. Pogger is a cheap Frogger knockoff, and your other game is a cheap Asteroid knockoff. I'm by no means on the side of those fucking scumbags reselling pre-made games, but I might not be on your side anymore either with this unoriginal homemade stuff that you've done. So, yeah, that really hit me hard, guys, because while I can understand, somebody looking at my games, and I want to direct this video at anybody who might be thinking the same thing. Hey, you are very critical of so many developers on Steam, so many games. Yet all you do is these little games where you've made an Asteroids ripoff, as this guy says right here, an Asteroids knockoff, and now you come out and you make a game that basically rips off old school Frogger. And to that, I take that hard because, first of all, the games and the developers that I am the hardest on with my videos and my scores and my reviews is those games where I play them and I feel no soul, I feel no creativity, I feel no passion or love for what the developer has produced. So to give you a better understanding, I've played terrible games before where the game was in really bad shape. It was really buggy and really incomplete and being sold. But when I played it, I could feel the passion that the developer had while making it. So even though the game was a mess and not any fun and full of bugs and everything else, I did not give it a bad score. And instead, with those kind of games, what I typically do is if I can feel some passion, if I can feel creativity, if I can feel a desire to make a good game, when I play it, I tend to offer those kind of games tons of suggestions, tons of feedback, tons of ideas that can help them bring their game home and make it better. I usually try not to be too critical of those games, and oftentimes I encourage the developer to continue to work on it and not give up. Now, if I play a game like a game that feels completely incomplete and is an asset flip of an existing kit on Unity, for example, which is there is tons of those games on Steam right now, games where somebody just buys or acquires an asset kit by some means from Unity or Unreal, and then exports it and only changes the name and then sells it exactly as it is, the base foundation, as a complete game, without putting any effort or anything into the game themselves. That is an asset flip. Now, there's a big difference between asset flips and asset messes, as I call them. Sometimes what a developer does is instead of buying an existing kit and doing no work, what they'll do is they'll buy 2 or 3 different asset kits or a whole bunch of different assets on Unreal or Unity, for example, buy a whole bunch of assets on those stores or asset kits, and then not knowing how to properly put together these assets, they just mash them all together into one unplayable, one super buggy, one really big mess. Either because they're too lazy to make it work, or because they don't have the knowledge and experience on how to put them together properly. Either way, it turns out to a quickly rushed, mashed together mess of Unity or Unreal assets that is completely uninspired, not creative, and just, you can feel it when you play it. So the biggest difference between my games and the games that I'm the most critical on is effort and passion. With Poggers here, guys, I want to go ahead and tell you guys all how Poggers came to be. A couple of months back, I was playing games one day with Fairy Girls, my moderator. We were playing games, and I decided she was watching me play games. For whatever reason, I had this desire to go back, and maybe we were talking about it. I don't remember. But Frogger came in, popped into my head, old school Frogger that I played as a kid. And I don't own an old school copy of Frogger. I don't have an old ColecoVision or nothing like that. So I wanted to play Frogger. And knowing what I know of Steam, I figured that there was at least a few, indie remakes of old school Frogger. So I searched Steam for something like old school Frogger. I was like, out of the hundreds of thousands of games on Steam today, surely somebody has remade Frogger and made a creative, fun little Frogger type game. And I was absolutely shocked when just a couple of months ago I could find nothing like old school Frogger. Sure, I found some 3D Frog games, but they were like platformers and things like that. They weren't anything like old school Frogger. So when I didn't see any indie game like Frogger on Steam back then, I immediately told my moderator that I'm going to work on my own. And I remember I was asking her, what should I use? I don't want to use a frog. I want to use something else that jumps. And she came up with the idea of, using a bunny rabbit. And I knew I didn't want to make it crossing a road. I wanted my game to stand out and be different than Frogger. So sure, my game is different than old school Frogger in the fact that you have to get a bunny instead of a frog home, and you cross a path of snakes instead of a highway. But my game has a lot of creative ideas that I've implemented into my game that Frogger just never had. For example, you could never collect carrots or any kind of power-up and go around and smash all the cars for double the points each time in Frogger. When I thought of this system, and Sarah, my moderator, can assure you and tell you that when I thought of this idea while I was, coding this game early on, she immediately loved the idea, and then especially once she started playing this idea, we both saw how addictive it was. Other people that have played it saw that getting all these points was super, super fun because it doubles each time, and it creates an element that Frogger never had. It's super fun, it's super addicting, and in fact, it's so much fun that once I put that into my game, at one point I had the game simply give you random carrots that would appear down here, and you could go get them and smash up the snakes. And you never actually had to get a bunny rabbit home, which is your goal, to go to the next level, much like Frogger. But all people wanted to do, including myself, is stay down here in the field, get these randomly generated carrots, and go around and smash up all the snakes because it was that much fun. So I had to change this game up a couple of days before I launched it. I had to make it so you had to get a bunny rabbit home to spawn a carrot. So I completely reworked it to force you to actually do your objective before you were rewarded with a fun part of the game. And again, this is something creative, something that Frogger never had. And I drew inspiration for this idea from Pac-Man. Pac-Man was a game where you had 4 ghosts, but you could go and get up to 4 ghosts and it would double each time. That's where my doubling points kind of came from, etc. However, there's so many enemies here that I couldn't allow you like Pac-Man. I couldn't allow at one point I was having them all flash and you could just kill any one of them. But I knew that wasn't going to work. That was way too easy. There was just way too many easy double points all real close together. So I decided to make it so one at a time would flash randomly and you would have to seek it out. And it really creates a system of risk versus reward because you're in a hurry before your Super Bunny time runs out to try to get across all the dangers of all the existing snakes that are moving different directions to try to get the one snake that is flashing next. So you're having to dodge around, and a lot of times it creates a lot of fun. You'll end up screaming at the game and screaming at the snakes or whatever. But I really like the way Poggers has turned out, and I do think it has enough creativity and different elements of gameplay than Frogger ever had. I think Poggers is completely different. Now, if we talk about rock and roll, I mean, the guy said that rock and roll is nothing but a cheap asteroids, ripoff. I mean, rock and roll, first of all, is inspired by asteroids. There's no doubt about that. I mean, my inspiration for rock and roll came from me loving the old classic arcade game Asteroids as a kid. It was my favorite game. It was my first real love that got me into gaming was Asteroids, and I always had a dream of making my own Asteroids type game. And so if we look at rock and roll here, guys, again, we have the ads, but to say my game is a cheap ripoff of Asteroids is, well, I understand with the comment that the guy left here. I completely understand where this guy's coming from, not knowing. But rock and roll just has so much that Asteroids never had. And a lot of the stuff is super creative stuff that I've added to the game, over time. So Asteroids, you were simply a ship and you shot asteroids, and every once in a while you would have a UFO come through and you could shoot that, and that's all it was. My game, I believe, has 15 different power-ups. My game has the ability, there's 9 different resources that drop out of the asteroids that you can collect, and I just, I made it so you can sell those resources for either points to help you get points so you can get a new ship because you're rewarded with new ships after certain scores, or you can sell those resources for Galax Cash, as you see here, and spin them in the Galactic Upgrade Station. So then you can buy all these different elements to upgrade your ship, or items like my Zaxtorian Dynamite, as I call it, inspired by the movie Napoleon Dynamite. Zaxtorian Dynamite allows you to blow up a lot of asteroids, or do a lot of damage to the bosses quickly. Here, you have the spiral attacks, which is right down here. That's why it's called rock and roll, rock for asteroid roll, for having a special attack rather than just a hyperspace as Asteroid had, where you'd hit a button and appear randomly in a random spot on the screen. No, my game takes that way further, and instead of just having you be able to teleport to a random part of the screen, which was risky back in old school Asteroids, this has its own risk as well. You'll do a spiral attack when you use one of your spirals, which you have a limited number of, and you can rebuy more here at the upgrade station. But your ship will do a spiral around really quickly to smash through the asteroids, but it has the risk of hurling you off quickly in one random direction, and it might be that it hurls you right into a rock, at a really fast speed, causing you to, really have no way of dodging it, and, death to be almost certain. So it definitely is really risky to use the spiral attack. But my game just creates so much, such as these little crumbles. Every rock has a risk of crumbling into a million little, really small crumbles that present a real danger. Asteroid never had that. I think the most it would ever break into is like 2 pieces. No, one of the rocks in rock and roll can break into as many as like 50 little crumbles. And when that happens, trust me, when you see a big rock crumble into 100 different little crumbles and they're going everywhere, you're like, oh shit. But like, you never had, like, look at this cannonball power-up that sends me hurling through asteroids for 30 seconds on my power-up timer, while you hear a Yahoo, screaming in the background. There's just so many different aspects to rock and roll that take it so much further than Asteroids ever was. It really is my baby. It is a game that I've wanted to make for my whole life. It really is a dream come true to have the opportunity nowadays with the technology and Game Maker, which is a really powerful game making system, to create a game that I've had in the back of my mind, I've had in my heart for wanting to make for decades, and now it's finally come true. So to say that this game here is a cheap, Asteroids ripoff, I gotta be honest, it stings. The guy says that what is it? A cheap asteroid knockoff. All I can say, Captain Kirk, and anybody that might be thinking this, is until you play my game and you feel the mechanics. That's another thing that's completely different than asteroids. The mechanics of how you move and the inertia that I've created in my game creates a fun and dynamic movement system that really, it's easy to understand, but it's difficult to master. So it takes time before you can actually control your ship in my game and control it well. But once you get past that learning curve and you learn how to control your ship in my game, it's a sheer joy to play once you understand how to move and how you can control that inertia to best benefit you. And there's so many power-ups, like I said, like the Zaxtorian dynamite that I've introduced. The A55 kicker, as I call it, was an idea for me to create a turret to help you out because there are a lot of asteroids and little rocks in my game. So I came up with the A55 kicker, which is a beer can. The idea is a beer can. You're out in space, you're drinking a beer, you empty the beer can, and I use that empty beer can with some duct tape to create this little bad boy. So and you set it outside your ship, put a little gun on that beer can with duct tape on it, and now you have your A55 kicker, which is kind of like ass kicker. So that's how I came up with that idea. I was trying to be clever and funny and original. Rock and roll just offers so much creativity. Mother sucker is another power up that you can get, and it's a power up that's pretty, common in a lot of these games. But when you have all these resources in the game, collecting a mother sucker is like a vacuum that helps you suck them up, so you don't have to go collect them all. They actually come to you, and it's a power up that really can make things a lot easier in the game as far as collecting those valuable resources that you can sell for either points or cash. And I call it mother sucker. Because that's exactly what you're doing, is sucking it up. But when I say it in the game, when you collect it, I basically say, you're a mother sucker. So, you can understand the implication there. Again, done with fun and creativity. All this stuff, the geogems, save it, use geogems. That's the whole point of the game, is collecting as many geogems as you can. Because at the end of the game, you see 50 fragments of the Earth. And the more geogems you've collected, you can protect those fragments, because only one of those reflections of the real Earth is the real Earth. So at the end of your game, if you've collected 10, which would be a good game, if you collected 10 geogems, you've had a good game, but you still only have a 20% chance of saving the Earth. And I allow you to protect whichever refractions of the Earth that you want with your geogems that you've earned. And then you watch them all explode, and you cross your fingers, and you hope that you end up saving the Earth. All of this is stuff, and many of the power-ups that I've created, many of the boss modes that I've created, such as Monster Rock in the game, which I think it's, right here. So Monster Rock in the game, you have a VDS, a really interesting enemy that I've created. He can be really tough. But Monster Rock, an absolutely huge asteroid, look how big it is, look how much bigger than the Earth it is, that you and your biggest enemy in the game basically play Pong with. You have to shoot it back and forth to each other, and to win this war, you have to keep shooting the rock while protecting the Earth of all the asteroids in here. You have to shoot the rock, keep this rock into this electric current here for a couple of minutes anyway, and it'll break down. And when it breaks down, all these little pieces of the rock are crumbling off of it, and then you have risk of these rocks crashing into the Earth and doing damage to the Earth, which if the Earth damage bar fills up too much, you'll lose an Earth. And if you don't have a Geogem to spawn a new Earth, your game's over. So, I mean, to say that this is a cheap asteroids ripoff is, I can't, it's laughable, to be honest with you. While it's inspired by my childhood love of asteroids, there is a ton of passion and well over 500 hours of my work and time put into rock and roll. It's been a labor of love, and it is full of passion, creativity, and new elements that many of these things I've never seen in any game before, not just asteroids. I've never seen a little turret called an A55 kicker. I completely came with that, of that with myself. When I introduced dynamite, rather than just calling dynamite, I drew from my love of a movie called Napoleon Dynamite, which is a movie recorded right here in my home state of Idaho. But I called mine Zaxtorian Dynamite instead of Napoleon Dynamite. So that's the creativity I'm talking about. You know, it's just this game here. I mean, like I say, while I should be angry or feel insulted by this guy's comment talking about how my games are just cheap knockoffs of old school games, nothing could be more further from the truth, especially rock and roll. There is just so much here in my game that is so much deeper, more advanced, and way more creative than Old School Asteroids ever was. Old School Asteroids was a success, but it didn't have even 1/100th of the creativity and probably 1/100th of the passion that I poured into my own game here. So, you know, it is what it is. People are free to, you know, think things about my games when they look at them without playing them. I mean, everybody's going to make an observation when they look at the games. They're going to say, "Ah, oh, cheap bastard." But until you actually know, or until you actually play my games, you really just won't understand how much deeper and how much more creative my games really are. Even with Poggers, my moderator who sat there and watched me code that game and helped me code that game and come up with ideas, my own moderator, Fairy Girls, can assure you that I've poured tons of hours and work into even Poggers, and rock and roll is even way deeper than that. So, you know, the only thing I can say here is the big difference between my games, going to Captain Kirk, you say, you know, basically he's saying that I'm a hypocrite. You know, he's saying that all I do is knock off games and asset flips and some of the worst stuff in the world, as I've already explained. The games that I target the hardest, that I'm the hardest on, is games where I feel no work and I feel no creativity, and I feel really low amount of effort in the games. That's the ones that I'm hard on. My games offer a ton of creativity, a ton of love, and a ton of hard work. So there's a lot of effort in my games, a lot of creativity, and you know, this comment really to me is absolutely silly. It just couldn't be further from the truth. And nowadays, with literally, we have millions of games out there now, guys. You could pretty much, I could make any game in the world, and somebody could say something about this. If I make a game where you shoot with a gun, somebody's going to say, "Oh, you know, there's so many shooter games out there." If I make a survival kind of game where you're trying to survive, people say, "Oh, there's millions of survival games." If I make a game where you're in space shooting up enemies, people, "Oh, there's a million space games already. You're just copying, you know, whatever one." It's literally impossible now to come up with a game. Even if you come up with it completely yourself and you're not drawing off the inspiration from an old game like I have here in these games, but even if I came up with something completely original, I can almost guarantee you that somebody would come back and say, "Ah, you copied this game. You're just a leech. You're, you know, whatever." All I can say is effort is here, creativity is here with my game, and in the case of rock and roll especially, nothing could be further from the truth of this thought and this comment right here. So I want to go ahead and let you guys chime in yourselves in the comments below. What do you guys think? Have you guys played my games? Have you guys seen me in some of my live streams coding on my games? Do you guys believe that my games are not only creative on their own aspect, or, you know, that I put a lot of work into them? Maybe you guys agree with this guy. Maybe you guys think I'm a hypocrite and all I do is make lazy, uninspired trash, and you know, I shouldn't be reviewing games if I'm going to make games like this. I would really be interested in your honesty, your honest opinions. Please put those down in the comments below, and hopefully I can address them. This has been Zaxtor99. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a good one.